Now that we have an understanding of what OB is, what management is, I'd like to introduce you to the key issues in organizational behavior today, because these are the things that we're going to sort of keep our eye on as we're going through, because it becomes important. So again, foundational. The next thing, the key issues today are three, in my opinion. Ability to recruit and retain employees, diversity, training and coaching workers in an ever-changing world. You heard about disruptors. We're seeing about how things change every day. Keeping our workers engaged and productive becomes important. That means an ongoing training, not just training, but coaching to make sure it works. And this is going to drive some of the things we look at this semester. Ability to recruit and obtain employees. Right now, there's over 7 million jobs open. 7 million, that's a lot of jobs. Most of them are because of a lack of skills. And these skills can range from technical skills to people skills to trade skills. And this is in the face of historically low levels of unemployment, as we talked in the macro overview. We're at about 3.5%. We also have an issue where geographic location of jobs where the workers are. So we see in some metropolitan areas that the unemployment rate is even below that 3.5%. But when we look at some of our rural areas, you're approaching 6%. So the recovery has not been LOL. So if you're trying to fill jobs and they're not where the people are, you have a challenge. Right now, the ease of movement with technology and the use of social media, the use of things like LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, you name it, we are more aware of what opportunities are out there for us, and some of these services are actually recruiting people. So ease of movement becomes important. Job satisfaction is just as important as money. We'll spend some time on that. So this is a key issue for these reasons. Second, the world is interconnected, as we talked about. Because of the internet, we're connected to everything. We're interdependent, we're interlocked, and on a long-term basis, that's where we're going. The supply chain is global. We can have the short-term try of mercantilism, but the threat, the long-term direction is there. You can't look at the population growth over the next 60, 70 years and not realize that the world is changing. Okay? And look at the changing makeup of America. Look at the mix of people. Let's look at women in the workforce. Women make up almost half the workforce, but they only hold 10% of leadership positions. They had 15.2% of corporate officer positions, and only 3% of Fortune 500 companies are headed by women. And women's income is below men. So we put that in. So we got these things going on. We got the aging of America, okay? And we're seeing less, the old get older, okay? So if you see this here, look at the number of people. Here is 65 to 70, but now look at what happened at 75 to 84 and 85 plus. Here we are today in 2020, and look at this growth as the population moves. Again, diversity means a lot of things. So I would suggest to you it's a business imperative. Okay, you have to do it. Globalization of business incorporates the world from a customer perspective, an employee perspective, a supplier, and a stakeholder perspective. And people drive business in all of these roles. The ethnic makeup of the U.S. is changing. Organizations need to incorporate these changes at every level of the organization. And some of the changes, if you come down to it, how you're going to train a senior citizen to work 64, 65 plus is going to be different than how you might train an 18-year-old or 17-year-old or 16-year-old to do the same job. So it's a business imperative. Why go global? Why think about that? More customers, more suppliers, more labor, more capital, less risk, more profit, therefore long-term sustainability. So that's within this context that we're going. But in the meantime, as we're going there, I think it's useful to stop off and look at culture. And culture is a shared set of beliefs, values, and patterns of behavior common to a group of people. Culture is the way you think, act, and interact. And culture sets parameters as we're going through this. And I think when we look at some of the things, when we look at differences, I'd like to take a look, is look at this as an iceberg. I mean, there's some things we can tell that are above the surface. Okay? Our dress, our age, our gender, our language, race, or ethnicity. But as we go down, eye behavior, facial expressions, body language, gender identity, and it works its way down to how do we make decisions? How do we approach that? What do concepts of justice mean to us? Do we value the individual or the group? What's our perception of mental health, illness, disability? Patterns of superior and subordinate roles in relationship, age, gender, class, sexual identity, and organization. So when we look at this, it's really a broader issue. And this is what we see is just the top of the iceberg. We may get down here, but there's a lot more. Culture is to know the best that has been said and thought throughout the world. Sometimes the tendency is to consider one's culture superior to the other. We have seen that historically, and we see that today in the world. Sometimes when you see and do different things, you have culture shock. When you go to a foreign country, you can have confusion and discomfort when you're in an unfamiliar culture. So originally, when you look at this shock U-turn, here's the honeymoon phase. Everything is great, wonderful, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, we're different. And then we start adjusting, and then we adapt to different cultures. And this can be not just in foreign countries, but within groups that we are part of, organizations. Culture is a broad base. Now, let's look at two levels of diversity. First is surface level diversity. Characteristics that you notice about them as soon as you see them. Okay? Deep level diversity is characteristics that can't be seen. Goals, values, personalities, knowledge. These take a while to learn about someone. And at an individual level, how do they think? How do they behave? What's important to them? What are their values? How does that influence individual and organizational outcomes? Okay, so we look at it is from within this cultural perspective, which is part of the whole diversity thing. When social integration is when members feel they're a core part of the group. Task conflict, how we approach a task. Relationship conflict, interpersonal conflict. Inclusion, a sense of being safe and valued, regardless of similarities or differences. Information processing. We all process information in a little different way. How do we integrate how we process information? How does this affect outcomes? Social integration. If you feel part of a group, the task performance capacity increase as well as in commitment to the group. Differences in status and power. Lower status group members are less likely to share their ideas or challenge the ideas of higher status. Task conflict over task issues. What are goals, deadlines, or work process? It has the potential to improve performance if it's not too high or too low. Interpersonal conflict is there. Personality clashes. It distracts from group performance and group member satisfaction. Inclusion, the sense of being safe, valued, and engaged in a group. More information sharing and commitment. Then information processing, a change in the way the groups integrate information and reconcile different perspectives, resulting in more creative thinking and prevention of premature consensus. Now, what is some of the barriers to inclusion? One, the like me bias. People like to associate with people who like them. We're comfortable. Stereotype is a belief about an individual group based on the idea that everyone in that group will behave the same way or have the same characteristics. And then we have prejudice, and that's outright bigotry or intolerance. I think if I'm going to look at which ones are more common, and I think the like me bias, I don't think it's intentional. I just think it's we sometimes get uncomfortable getting out of our comfort zone. And that can be you as a student going to a networking event and trying to interact with people from the business community. They're older than you. You may think they're different. Stereotype, I think we all have them. And then prejudice. Each one of these is a different approach to work through. What are barriers to continued perceived threat or loss? Okay, if we think we're going to have a threat, we are going to protect our own prospects if it's going to hurt us. Our belief that our own language, native country, cultural norms are superior to all others. We see that today. Unequal access to organizational networks. Women minorities are often excluded from organizational networks. The good old boy. This can be important to one's job performance, mentoring opportunity, and being seen as a candidate for promotion. Training and coaching workers is in an ever-changing world. The world is changing and technology is driving it. Skills need to be kept current. Now, this sort of gives you a sense of some of these broad issues, but I would like to leave you with the following from Maya Angelou.
Family. I note the obvious differences in the human family. Some of us are serious, some thrive on comedy. Some declare their lives are lived as true profundity, and others claim they really live the real reality. The variety of our skin tones can confuse bemused delight, brown and pink and beige and purple, tan and blue and white. I've sailed upon the 7 seas and stopped in every land. I've seen the wonders of the world, not yet one common man. I know 10,000 women called Jane and Mary Jane. I've not seen any two who really were the same. Mirror twins are different, although their features jibe, and lovers think quite different thoughts while lying side by side. We love and lose in China, we weep on England's moors, and laugh and moan in Guinea, and thrive on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, are born and die in Maine. In minor ways we differ, in major we're the same. I note the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike.